at Castle Church, before we ever moved in, our number one value, the thing that we put the most premium on, was that we will worship Jesus among all races and ethnicities. So that's something that we love to celebrate. We love to celebrate the idea that we have many cultures and racial and ethnic family members here. And so we also live in a city, the city of Norwich, that's incredibly diverse. Large populations of Peruvian and Mexican and Dominican and Haitian, and we want to make sure that they're welcome and feel welcome out of our hospitality because of the love of God for them here at Castle Church. And the other thing I'd like to say at the outset of this is when you read the scriptures and you read about Jesus in the New Testament, so many times he honored the faith of a foreigner. Now I know for me that means in our context, you've had experiences in another culture and in another country that helped shape your faith. And we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. But the point that we hope to get across is the faith of a foreigner, the faith of somebody who's developed this in another place, and their journey here helped shape them in who they are today. So if you could introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
My name is Jackie Hall. And I'm married, and I have one daughter and 2 grandkids.
Okay.
My name is Louisa Bowles, and married and have 2 girls.
Married to me, by the way.
Married to the pastor, Adam Bowles.
And so I wanted to start with the fact that I think it'd be interesting for people to know that you both were in the same orphanage at the same time. And I think, Jackie, you could tell a little bit about the story. How old were you? How long were you there for? And what do you remember of Louisa when you were there?
Well, I was 4 years old when I first went to the orphanage. I don't really remember much because I was very young. I was there for 13 years, and I do remember Louisa. Louisa was our greatest rock collector, and she was one of the younger ones, so we didn't really get together with the little ones. We had to, get into our own groups. But yes, I did know Louisa very well.
And some of the stories that you have from the orphanage, because I've known you for years. We've had so many laughs together about just your different experiences, and even in the orphanage. You have any particular stories that right away stand out to you that might be fun to share?
Well, I have a lot, but one is we used to love riding the goats. We used to have about 300 goats, and we used to go and pick the bigger ones, take them to a hill, and we used to sit on them, and we used to ride them down the hill, holding on to the horns. And then we'll be going flat on our face down on the...
I wish I had a picture. So, asking Louisa now about her experience, I feel like you want a rebuttal because Jackie says you were the biggest rock collector, but you disagree.
Yes, I do disagree. I don't remember collecting rocks. There's pictures of us, and there's marbles, what I can remember. But I was 9 years old when I went to the orphanage. I remember seeing Jackie, but she was she's a bit older than me, so I didn't always get to see her, but I remember her. I remember her and her sisters, and obviously she's been a long time before me. So they knew all the ins and outs and what went on and who was who and who to be with and who not to be with and what to do so you won't get in trouble. And so sometimes I found that the hard way, but yeah, I left when I was 11 in 1985.
And do you remember the moment when your mom brought you there?
I do. So she brought me there, and there was a gate. They opened, and then they shut it. And she came in and talked to Josie, and I believe Sandra was there, which is Jackie's sister, and she used to help Josie in her home with her children. And they both came out. My mom was talking probably a half hour, maybe 40 minutes, and my mom said goodbye. I had a little suitcase, and she said goodbye, and the gate like, and the chains just closed, and she was gone. And it was frightening. I knew nobody. I've never been in the, I only knew, I lived with my Aunt Olivia, which is very, it was a small house and we didn't have a lot of people. So to be around so many people was frightening. I was 9. I was scared. I didn't even know where I was going to sleep or what was I didn't know anything. I was nothing, none of it was explained to me.
What's the picture in your hand?
So this is a picture of me and my
Can you show it?
brother.
Yeah.
And it was 35 years ago. It was taken on the 17th of September. It was the day I left.
That's the day you left.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this is one of the ones that was from Americans that lived in that house, and they were helping, and they took the picture.
And so I just want to go back to Jackie now. You remember, you were telling me the number of children that were in the orphanage, and you were there at a certain population, and then it grew.
Yes, when I first went to the orphanage, there were probably 20 to 25 kids, and then it started growing and growing till we reached the number of 350 kids. Till the age of over 20 years old.
And this is, what's the name of the town? What does the town's name mean?
The town, the name of the town is called Valle de Ángeles, which means Valley of Angels.
Could you describe that community for us? Like, bring us there for a moment.
Well, Valle de Ángeles, it was a small village. Now it's like a big city. But it's a village that is a very happy village, very touristical. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of craft shops, handcrafted things. So it's a very touristical place, a very, very happy little place too.
Yeah. And speaking of handcrafts, do you want to show us what you have?
Yes.
This.
I have this big thing that my sister had somebody made for me. It was just a plain piece of wood, and this guy crafted this very carefully, and my sister had him carve my name, and he says, Jackie, you will forever be in my heart. So this is one of the kind of works that they do, and it's all done by hand.
What's it supposed to depict?
This is actually represents the village. This is how actually the village looks. It's actually Valle de Ángeles.
It's so intricate.
A part of,
I love it. Even the street.
Yeah, it's a part
streets.
of one of the streets in the places where we used to walk more. So this is like the place where I actually walked.
What's one of your favorite memories as a child? If you could describe to us a favorite memory as a child in Honduras.
Well, when I was at the orphanage, I am going to get kicked for this, but we used to have a little opening in one of the fences, and we used to get out of there to go into the night into the village, like, because they used to have parties and carnivals, and we wanted to go and experience that. So we used to go at night, and we used to go into the village and
How many of you would sneak out?
There were probably about 15 of us.
Why am I not surprised? So also, we were talking earlier about things culturally that are still in your lives, even now. For you, we talked a little bit about maybe a meal that you continue to make in your home. Can you describe that for us?
Yes, I still love my Honduran food. I miss that so much. So I try to make as much as Honduran meals I can, because my husband loves that stuff too, and my daughter loves it. So I make a lot of chicken soups, which is very common over there. I make baleadas, which is flour tortillas, homemade flour tortillas with refried beans and cheese, grated cheese. So you fold them up, and they're called baleadas.
And what goes into making that? Is this what's the process?
It's just flour, a little bit of salt, and baking powder and water. That's all there is to make the tortillas, but you have to really make the dough good, otherwise they don't come out
Hey,
good.
listen, I can testify that your food is really good. And that people should start coming to Castle. If nothing else, they're going to meet people like you who make some good food. You know what I'm saying? So you talked about the food. I was going to ask Louisa now about the connection that you still have. I know you both do with a lot of phone calls back home. That's very meaningful and very common experience for somebody who was living in a different country who's now here. Now for you, I've personally witnessed this many times, but describe to us your conversations back home and what that's like for you.
So for me, I mostly call my mom. My brothers are usually there, or my cousins, or someone, my nieces, nephew, and they tell me about their life. You know, it has been either work or struggles or sicknesses, but a lot of the times is what they do. You know, they live in the country, and they farm their own food, and they have their own animals, and they live off the land, and they have faith. My mom's always had a faith in God, and it's what's kept her. She's just turned 80, and she's strong, and her faith is still strong, and we are in a pandemic right now, and it's really bad, you know, for them, because they don't have the health or the help that we have now, that we have here in the States. But her faith, she believes in God. She knows God's going to keep her. He's kept her all through her life. She's been poor all her life. And she knows she'll be safe because God is with her.
So talking about faith, again, we're celebrating this type of faith, a faith where I think if you look at the scriptures, it actually says in James about how God has, it's like a gift of faith for people who are from more humble backgrounds, just comes in a different way. How do I want to describe it? He compares it between somebody who's rich and might not think they need God as much as somebody who doesn't have much and tends to have this faith. When I talk about faith of a foreigner, I remember I've said a couple times in the service about the 10 lepers, all 10 were healed. One of them came back to Jesus to say thank you. And Jesus, at that point, the man who happened to come back was Samaritan. And Jesus says, this faith of a foreigner should be praised. So talking about faith, we've talked about some significant moments for you, particularly your aunt, if you could describe that now.
So, yeah, I was about 7 years old, and I believe, I'm not sure if there were a group of Sandinistas, which are not very nice people, broke into the country of Honduras from Nicaragua, I believe, if I have the story right. But yeah, they came into our town. It's very poor in the mountains. The town I was living in was called Los Juanes. And my aunt, Raquel, which is Rachel translated, was with my other aunt, Olivia, who was raising me at the time, and my brother and her family. And they happened to come in. And it was a frightening thing because they just came in. They barged into the house, into her kitchen. She had a almost like a gourd, but it was like a basket, and it had tortillas in it. And they just took the barrel of the gun and threw it, and they were asking where the men. They weren't there. They were at work or ready for them. And they pointed guns, and we ran into the woods. And so as we ran into the woods, they were on the other side pointing the guns, and it was frightening, and we all frightening. My aunt, very short woman with a lot of faith, stood forward in the group, and she shouted, La sangre de Cristo tiene poder, which means the blood of Christ has the power. And she said it over and over and over. And to this day, we don't know where they went. They disappeared. There was no more terrorizing us. We ran into the woods still and didn't come back for some time. But her faith and the faith of my family, I believe I'm alive today because I had a praying grandmother. Her name was Louisa as well. My mom. And they prayed, they had faith. Sometimes I've heard stories where my aunt Olivia would stay with her sister overnight praying for her because she had asthma and she couldn't breathe. And the only way that she was going to get better was God to touch her because they had no medicine. And it's a faith that I want and I have.
That's right, and I think that's a great way to put it, because I had no other means to rely on in that moment. And I'm going to ask you about one more moment of faith that I know very well, and then I'm going to come to you as well, Jackie, to talk about it. But I think a big answer to prayer in your life, our lives, was your reunion with your mom. If you want to show that picture and kind of describe that for a moment.
So this is Costa Rica, but that's where we met. So this is the picture of me and my mom. It's very emotional, but it was something I prayed for a long, long time. It's been 34 years since I've seen my mom, and I hadn't been able to see her. And so Adam and my family made it possible. You know, obviously God made it possible for me to go, and we were able to reunite. And
What was that moment like when you got through the airport?
it was incredible. It was a moment that I can't really describe. It was the feeling of joy, the feeling of God really heard my prayers. It was a blessing. It was a feeling that, you know, God really doesn't forget, and He never forgot. And when it was the right time, it was a possible time to go. It happened, and it was beautiful. It was moving. I'll never forget. I'll never forget until the day I go.
We didn't say this at the beginning, but obviously you're here now in Connecticut because a family here in Connecticut adopted you from the orphanage. And Jackie described to me earlier about an opportunity you were given to go to another country for your education. You went there to England. Circumstances evolve. It's a long story, but you end up over here and now have been living here many years. How many years now?
I've been here 22 years.
So I would like to ask you the same type of question, something to do where maybe you could share about what your faith means to you. Maybe there was a specific answer to prayer or a verse or something along those lines.
Well, I remember a few years ago, I was going through a hard time. Like, my heart was broken, and I would cry and cry every night. I was just down, and I didn't think I would be happy again. And I remember there was a verse that was actually specifically for me that God sent, that said, "Weeping may endure but for the night."
Yeah.
But joy cometh in the morning.
Right.
So that really touched me, because it's like you can go through a hard time, but God can make it all better.
Yeah. Okay, so you know, obviously the three of us have had many, many, many good times together. You're one of our closest friends in the whole world. And we've been able to see even Emily from the time she was born all the way up through till now. And we're a family. And I was, as we were kind of like just joking around at the beginning, I was thinking about how good God has been to us to bless us with this friendship. And I think about the two of you in particular, how long you've known each other, the times that you've laughed together, stories that you can share together about the orphanage. And I wondered if you wanted to just talk a little bit about the friendship that you guys have been able to enjoy over all these years.
Well, we, like I said, at the orphanage, we didn't really get involved with the little ones, you know, because it was a rule at the orphanage. The older ones did not get involved with the little ones. But Luisa was a rock collector. She was, because I remember her with a dress, and she'll fold it up and she'll have rocks. It wasn't marbles. Maybe another time it was. And she was lucky to have a suitcase coming to the orphanage, because I had a little box. And but yes, we had good times. And I remember when I was taken to another country, like giving an opportunity to go to college and learn the language. And when I was able to come to this country, I thought, oh, Luisa's there. I'm going to be able to see Luisa. We can get together. We can do Honduran stuff again, all over again. So when I came to this country, Luisa was such a good friend to me. And also you, Adam, you know, you became my family, and Luisa involved me in everything. You know, we went everywhere together, you know, from grocery shopping to doing silly things. So it was very nice to connect with Luisa again, because I lost I lost contact with a lot of friends from the orphanage. And now with this Facebook thing, I have been able to find a lot of them. So
that's
I'm able to, I have been able to contact a lot of them.
What would you want to say to the city, people who are watching this, who are maybe weren't born here or their first generation? What would you want them to know? What would you want them to hear from our heart to theirs?
Well, to me, it's like, you come from a very poor country, and you are giving an opportunity to go to another country where it's more advanced than our own country. You come and learn a lot of different things. The culture is very different. It's a shocking culture to us, but there's so much to learn from this country that we could not learn from our country. So there's a lot of advantage of being here, because when I was in Honduras, I couldn't have had what I already have here. So I'm always thankful to God for giving me another chance.
Thank you both. That was awesome. We're going to continue to do these. This is going to be a first in a series. As I mentioned before, we have in our church, obviously Honduras represented. We have St. Croix, we have Guyana, we have Mexico, we have Peru, we have Puerto Rico, we have, what did I miss? Did I say Haiti already? Yeah, we have these many different nations represented here. And knowing the scripture as it says in Revelation, one day, as I've been saying lately, John, when he got that picture of what heaven's going to be like, he said the one thing he couldn't stop looking at, the one thing that made his jaw drop, was to look over and get a picture of what heaven was going to be like, and people from all cultures, all nations gathered together to worship Jesus. So you both did a great job. Thank you.